Welcome to Property Mama, episode 5 of Adventures in Real Estate. This is where I share my experiences of some of the shenanigans that have happened in real estate over the past 28 years, which is how long I have been buying and selling real estate. If we haven't met yet, my name is Wendy Chamberlain. I am a buyer's agent and vendor advocate in Melbourne, Australia, which means we help our clients purchase properties with heart. And those of you that have tuned in to previous episodes will be aware that we have been trying to get a tenant out of a property that we purchased for a client off market last year. So the latest update there is that they've finally moved out. We've managed to, they've moved out, they've found some other accommodation and they have left the property, which is great news for our clients. The settlement had been delayed by 3 weeks, as I shared earlier in other episodes, and that's scheduled to take place this coming Monday. We are doing our final inspection on Thursday, and if all goes well at the final inspection, we will be moving the settlement forward to the Friday, which means that our clients may well be getting the keys in their hot little hands this Friday. So fingers crossed that that takes place. It's been a bit of an ordeal, but they love the house. It's just been a little bit complicated to get the tenants to move out of the property, but that has now happened. We did get an order from the sheriff based on getting a VCAT order the week prior, which is the administrative tribunal here in Victoria, in Australia, that are the ones that make decisions around who does what, and the member ruled in the favour of the real estate agent to say that the tenant had to get out. They had to get out by the Tuesday. They didn't. They were out by the end of the Wednesday, and then it's just taken a bit of time for all of their gear to be moved. So they moved, but they didn't take their stuff. And that was all being done over the next few days, over the weekend, because when you purchase a property, you are purchasing it without any other people's stuff in there. So the rule of thumb is if you need a screwdriver to remove it, then it stays. Otherwise, it's got to go. So part of our final inspection that we are conducting on Thursday is to make sure that the property is as it was when we inspected it. They had a lot of stuff there. But it's more so to make sure that any additional gear that is there has been removed. So I did notice, I did do a drive by the property last week just to see how things were progressing, and there was a bunch of stuff in the driveway, just piled up timber. That has to go. That has to be removed. So we'll be requiring that to be taken away when we do our final inspection. So stay tuned to see how that goes. I was going to share with you today some of the things that I've encountered when speaking to real estate agents, and also speaking to people that have come on as clients and their experiences that they have had when dealing with real estate agents. So just something recently was actually last week. One of our clients they saw this amazing property, really well priced, really competitively priced, little 2-bedroom apartment, and not too far away from where I live actually. And it was advertised for $400,000, which is a very, very, very good pricing for what it was, because it was huge. It had a big outside courtyard. The property itself was over 60 square meters, which is really quite large. And it was a 1-bedroom. Can't remember now. Anyway, so I rang the agent because it was going to be open for inspection that evening, and I rang the agent to find out what I could about the property, because it was for private sale. And what that means is that it's not going to go to auction. It's going to be sold as soon as the buyer and the seller, whoever the buyers are going to be the one that's buying it, when they agree on the terms and the price, then the property is going to be sold. So this property hadn't been open. It was the first open for inspection was going to be that Thursday, so which was last week. So our client had seen it online due to the size of it and the dimensions, and the Vaseline on the lens, shall we say. You ever heard that when ever looked at a property, gone out to look at a property, and what you see on the photos doesn't quite match up with what you see in person? I call that the Vaseline on the lens. They also have the photographers have wide fisheye lenses on their cameras. So you look at a property online and the photos might show it as this big, and you walk in and it's this big. You're kind of like trying to get in there. So they can be a bit creative with the photography. They're not allowed to do too much. Not too much photoshopping is allowed to take place. That's not to say that it doesn't take place, but it's not supposed to happen. So I spoke to the real estate agent who was an out-of-area agent. Now, the interesting thing about agents when they're out of area is that, number one, they may not always know the value of a property, but number two, in my experience, they often are pretty keen to get a property sold. So one of the things when it comes to buying real estate is understanding the offer process for every single agent and every single agency, because they're different. You have to understand how agency A versus B versus C operate, because they'll do things differently. So this agent he's from town. He's not close to where the property is. So it may well be a property that they have on their rent roll that they've rented, and the person is looking to sell it. In this particular instance, it's owner occupied, and the person has lived there since the property was built in 2013, so about 11 years ago. And so they've lived there the entire time. Now, I do know this complex as well, and I know that the complex has had issues. There's been two major things with this complex, but one major thing that certainly here in Victoria has been an issue for apartment builds has been the cladding on the outside of the properties. You may have heard in the news some years ago now, there was the Grenfell fire in the UK where many people perished, where the property went up in smoke because the cladding that had been used on the outsides of the building was flammable. And as it turns out, they did audits here in Australia, certainly in Victoria, and many buildings which had been clad when they were built were found to have flammable cladding, which is a no-go. And what's happened over the last few years is the councils have worked with the Victorian Building Authority to get everything rectified in conjunction with the government. So the Victorian government has paid for part of it. So oftentimes when we're looking at a property that is an apartment and it's a newer apartment, we have to check the contract to see how far along in the process the owners' corporations are and the building owners are to getting things like cladding issues fixed. Some have totally gone ahead and fixed everything because it's been a number of years now. Some are still going through the process. So this particular property had been flagged that it had flammable cladding. And in speaking to the agent, he said the cladding had been fixed up, which is terrific. However, I also know in this building that it's known for having water issues in the car park, because often when they build these big apartment complex, now this one, I say big, it's maybe 50, 60 apartments, they will dig down to put an underground car park in, and they have to make sure that they create it in such a manner that the water, when it rains, when it goes in, it actually escapes. So this particular building, something's gone amiss with the build of it, and the water has got in and it causes leaking issues. It can cause concrete issues, all kinds of problems. And it is an ongoing issue with this particular building. So I spoke to another real estate agent that I know that's local to the area, not the one selling. There's another little tip for you. If you want to talk about a particular property, speak to the agent that's not selling it, because chances are that that particular agent has been through the property. So I spoke to another agent that I know really well, and he said that who has sold other apartments in this building. Now, look, everything sells for a price. So whilst this building has had cladding which has been fixed up, that's all good. While it has problems with the drainage in the car park, the properties being sold will still sell for a price, knowing that the incoming purchaser is likely up for footing a bill alongside all the other owners in the building for getting those works rectified. In this particular case, apparently it's $1 million bill, which is going to be split across all of the owners. So I think it was, I think this complex has multiple buildings in it, and the agent I spoke to said it was about $6,000 to $8,000 per lot that they would be up for. That's fine. As long as you know that going in, that you factor that into your purchase price and what you're willing to spend on the property. If you really love it, love the building, love the amenities, all that kind of thing, you may be prepared to pay that. So What's funny about this is when I rang the real estate agent that is selling the property. As I said, he's not local to the area. He is in the CBD, and I said to him, okay, do you have contracts of sale for this property? And he had just received them. I said, has anybody inspected the property? No, the first inspection was going to be 5:30 that evening. But he's already had people request the contract to have a look at it. Because when I spoke to him, he said basically the first person to make an offer that's acceptable to the vendor are going to sell it. This is Thursday. And I said, and I had an open for inspection scheduled for Saturday, and it hadn't been open at all. And he said, I've been really overrun and surprised by the level of interest in this property. And I said, okay, so my client's interested in having a look at the property. It's open at 5:30 today. If they're not able to get there today and want to go on Saturday, will you still hold the open? And he said, well, provided we haven't sold it, we will. I said, okay, so just to understand that if you have it open at 5:30 today, the Thursday, that if you receive an offer, you'll just sell the property and you won't have this Saturday open. He said, yep, he'll just cancel the open. He said, and I quote, he said, I'm not around here. I'm not going to do any private inspections, because I did ask him about doing a private inspection if we couldn't make the 5:30 on the Thursday. Was he prepared? He says, I'm not around here. I'm not making any money on this sale, so I want to sell it as quickly as possible. The first person that makes an offer that's acceptable, we're going to sell it. So what's interesting about that is I am sure that, first of all, the vendor doesn't know that the real estate agent is just trying to get it sold as quickly as possible and get it off his books, so he gets sold and gets out of there, gets his money and gets out of there. He's not prepared to do any private inspections, because he said, I'll be there every 5 minutes and I'm not going to come all the way there. So he's not prepared to put in any effort to getting the property sold, or even potentially getting the best price for it. As soon as an offer comes in that is acceptable to the vendor, and I would venture to suggest acceptable to the agent who will tell the vendor to take it, he's going to sell the property. And I said, what about making an offer subject to a building and pest? Because we always suggest to our clients that the offers are made subject to a building and pest, and particularly me knowing what kind of issues are going on with this property. And he said, well, the cladding's been fixed, so I don't see why you'd need to get a building and pest inspection done. So that is ding, ding, ding. That is warning bells right away. Where you have an agent telling you you don't need to do a step in your due diligence, guess what? You need to do that step in your due diligence. So I was having a conversation with our client, because so basically this agent is saying there's been a lot of interest. We're going to sell it. Whoever makes the best offer straight away, or not even best offer, whoever makes an offer that's acceptable to the vendor straight away, we're going to sell it. We'll cancel the open on Saturday. So I was just relaying all this to my client, and he's saying, well, should we also make an offer because we can cool off? And I said, well, no, because we don't understand these other aspects of what's going on in that particular property. I said, go along. I said, can you get there at 5:30 today? He said, yes. I said, right, go along and just let me know straight away, because we'll have to swing into action. If you want to buy the property, we'll have to swing into action, make the offer process. Because here's another thing about the particular offer process for this real estate agent. They, and many agents do this, by the way. This is why I'm saying you've got to understand the offer process. Some agents will accept an offer, ring everybody, let them know the amount. And if someone wants to contest, you end up in a boardroom auction. So it's like an auction process, which is very transparent and everybody can see what's going on. Other agents do it like this person does it, which is first in, best dressed. If another offer comes in pretty much straight away, they will, and it's better than the first offer, they'll go back to the first person and say another offer. They won't divulge the price. They'll say another offer's come in, you get another shot. So you get one other shot to up your offer, but that's only if you're the person that's made the first offer. If a whole bunch come together, it's whoever is crossing their desk first, I suppose. So, because otherwise he said the first offer in, it's going to get sold. And then when I had a further conversation with him, he's saying, well, if two came in together, then they do the first person in gets their right of reply, but not knowing how far you need to pitch it. Now, it's an interesting process, because I have been involved in offer processes like that before. And the person that has purchased the property, we actually had made an offer, and it was on another property a few years ago now, and they are not divulging what the offers are. They might give you a kind of a roundabout, but it's very, very rubbery what they're saying with the figures on the properties. And as it turns out, the person that got told that we'd made the offer and they need to put their best and final in, they jumped $30,000. So they ended up buying the property. So we'd put our offer in first, so we got the second right of reply. But they jumped over $30,000, which I found out later because he wouldn't tell me the amounts, but I found out afterwards. He told me that they sold it for $30,000 more than what we had offered. Now, our offer was all that our client was prepared to go to, but it shows you that somebody had jumped without knowing, because you don't know, you're not told any parameters. And if that had been at an auction, you're unlikely to having to pay another $30,000. You probably would have paid another one or two. But that's some of the processes that the agents use, which is why it is very, very important to understand. I say, well, real estate's a game, and understand the game you're playing. Like with anything, you need to understand the rules of the game that you are playing. So I wanted to also share some of the, say rules of the game that you're playing, some of the shenanigans that the real estate agents get up to. I had a client come on board after she had been, she had a bad experience with the real estate agent. And I've got a few stories along these lines to share with you, because some real estate agents can be fluid with the truth. It's probably the gentlest, nicest way I can put it. And so this particular, again, a future client, when she got in touch with me, she was having a difficult experience with working with the real estate agents, because she didn't trust them. And in this particular instance, it was with good reason. And so she also had some health challenges. Now, she had a brain injury, so she got very easily confused. And the real estate agent was taking advantage of that. So she'd seen a property that she liked, and she wanted to make an offer. Now, the real estate agent wrote it up on a contract of sale, which is not uncommon to do. But the real estate agent didn't explain to her that if her offer was accepted, then the property, she'd be buying the property. Because when I spoke to her, she said, "Oh, I only just made an offer. I can pull out of the offer." I said, "Well, no, you can't. Not if it's gone to the vendor now for them to accept the offer." And she said, "Well, I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to have a choice there." I said, "Well, you do understand that you've signed a contract, and the vendor, if they sign the contract, then you're going to be buying that property." She goes, "Well, I don't want to buy the property anymore." I said, "Well, you've not understood what's gone on." And so the agent didn't explain everything to her there. So it happens more often than you think that the agents are not necessarily telling the truth. I had a client come to me. He wanted me to help him negotiate the purchase on a property. Now, he had received an inheritance from his grandma. So he was on, he was living in public housing, so he's on welfare, and he was living with his mum, and that was his life. He had lived with his mum in public housing for his entire life. And his grandma passed away and left him a sum of money. Now, in real estate terms, probably not what you would consider a huge amount of money, but it was enough to buy him his own little studio in student accommodation, which was basically all that he could afford. So with student accommodation, you need to understand that there are certain rules that each building has in relation to student accommodation. And one of the main ones is that only a student can occupy the accommodation. So if you're not familiar with student accommodation, it's tiny. You walk in, you'll have a little kitchen, bathroom, and then you probably just have a bed, and it's tiny, tiny accommodation. And as I said, Most of the student accommodation rules and buildings only allow students to live there. So you can buy student accommodation, but you can't live there yourself. So my client approached me about helping him negotiate the purchase of this particular property. He had seen it. He wanted to buy it. It was within his budget. But we had the contract, and he was just wanting to make sure that he understood exactly that he could actually live in this building, because the real estate agent was saying to him, yes, not a problem. You can buy it. You can live there. No problem at all. The agent was lying, absolutely lying, because the agent just wanted to sell, because student accommodation is a very particular product, and it's not necessarily easy to sell because, for exactly what I've just said, in most circumstances, you have to sell to someone who is looking, who is either a student or you can only rent it to students. So you've got a very, very limited pool. So when you're looking to invest in real estate, you have to not only look at the what's required or what your strategy is for going in, but what is your strategy for coming out the other side? Because at some point in time, you may choose to move that property on from your portfolio, and how easy is it going to be to do that? With student accommodation, it's not necessarily very easy to do that, because you are selling into a very limited investor pool, only people that are looking for a student accommodation, and their price point is such that often people will buy them for cash or to put into their super fund or whatever they're looking to do. But it's quite a limited pool of buyers that you as a seller are trying to then on sell. So this real estate agent had told my client that yes, he could live in the particular property. Well, we looked at the contract and had it checked by a solicitor, and no, you could not live in that property unless you were a student. Now, he's not a student. He just wanted to not be living with his mum. So he was a grown adult that had a job. So he couldn't, he could buy it, but he couldn't live there. So we did not proceed with that particular offer. So what did happen is we found another property, which was a student accommodation in the inner city of Melbourne, and we very carefully checked the contract. And yes, you could live in the property even though you weren't a student. So they're not that hard to come, but in speaking to the agent, they said it, and of course we checked everything to make sure. But make sure you understand via looking at the contract and getting your paperwork checked by a conveyancer or a solicitor that what you're being told is actually the fact, because it's not always the case. It absolutely is not the case. And in my experience, some agents will say whatever they need to say to get a property sale. That's just what they are like. And that's not all agents. We work with some really fabulous agents, and they're the ones we love working with, because they do have the best interests of the buyer at heart. But it is not always the case. And so it's important to do your due diligence. So I do talk about the many moving parts of real estate, and there are lots of pieces to the puzzle and a lot of due diligence that you do need to do. And you've got to know the order in which the things are done as well. I had somebody come to me who became one of my clients because she had had some horrendous experiences with real estate agents, and she just didn't trust real estate agents. And it's one of the reasons why people do come to us to work with us as their buyer advocate, as their buyer's agent, because we are advocating for our client. And it's something that I keep repeating, and you need to remember that the real estate agent is not working for you. As a buyer, they may be very pleasant and polite and lovely to you, but they have been employed by their client, which is the vendor. And it is their job to get the property sold and to get as much money as they can for the particular property. Now, again, some agents are just looking to get the property sold. They don't really care how much it's going to be sold for. They just want to get it sold. I've even had experiences. So what I talk about in relation to real estate agents is that there's great agents to sell through and there's great agents to buy through. And they don't always necessarily, they're not always the same person, because some agents I love buying properties from because they will just do what I call transact it. They will transact it. They want to get it off their books. They will sell it as quickly as they can because they get paid and they can move on. Because I don't think vendors understand that the difference for the real estate agent in the commission that they earn could be a few $100s, whereas for the seller, for the vendor, it's a matter of thousands. And we're talking 10, 20,000 type money. We're not talking like tiddlywinks here. And so an agent can look to get a property sold, and it can be quite a number of thousands of dollars difference in the pocket of the vendor, but it's not so much for the agent. And so when it comes to buying real estate, I love buying off what I call buying agents that are selling, sellers that are buying, we're buying from, selling agents that we like to buy from, I should say, because sometimes they will just transact a property. I remember one time with a particular agent, and he's a lovely, lovely person, and he actually said to me on the contract, he said, this is what they want for the property. Write this on. This is back in the day we actually wrote with pen on the contracts. He said, write the figure, cross it out, put another figure. It was about 5,000 more, which is what we were prepared to pay for the property. He said, put the lower figure, cross it out, put the actual figure that I know that they're going to sell it for, and I'll tell the buyer, I'll tell the seller that we got you up. So he's going to go back to his client, who is the vendor, and tell them that I got them up on price. Whereas the true story is he told me what the vendor's going to sell it for, cross it all out, and just say what you're going to be selling the property for, and that I got them up for you. I do like buying property from that person, I've got to say, because they like to transact property. And it's more common than you might think. It happens quite a bit that the agents will get a sale done because they get paid that way. And the difference in the 5, 10, 20,000, whatever it might be, is not a lot of money for the agent for their commission. So back to my client who came to me and she'd lost all faith in real estate agents because she didn't trust them. Because she had a real estate agent stand over her and make her sign a contract. So she they brought her in. This was in the days where you used pens to sign. It's electronic now, but same thing. You'd have to sign the pad, wouldn't you? I had the agent had brought her in, sat her down in the office. So number one, she's in an unfamiliar environment. She's in the environment of the real estate agent's office, which is their turf. So that's a tactic right there. They get you into the office, and so you're on their turf, not your turf. And he stood over her and bullied her, you could suggest, into signing the contract. She didn't want to buy this particular property because she decided it wasn't the right property for her. But because he was doing these standover tactics, she felt she needed to sign, and she signed the contract to buy a property that she did not want. And then because of all of that, obviously she's not feeling very good about that particular property or the process or the interaction. So she cooled off. So it cost her money to get out of the contract under Victorian law, where it's not an auction. So the outside of auction terms, just regular selling property, buying property. You have 3 days to cool off. And so you can cool off for a penalty, which is 0.2% of the purchase price. So she was able to exit the contract because she didn't put any clauses in there either. He didn't allow her to put any subject to clauses. He just standing over her, bullying her to sign a contract, which is just unbelievable. Anyway, it happens. And so she called off, which means that she exited the contract, which is a change of mind. You can do that, pays the penalty, and then doesn't have to buy the property. But obviously that does cost you. So it's 0.2%. So it might cost you $1,000, but still, that's money that should be in your pocket. So it's interesting, the world of real estate, because some real estate agents seem to think it's okay to bully people, to lie to people, just so that they can get a sale through, which I guess it's why we're here to help people. So when I talk about buying real estate, I do talk about buying real estate with heart. And for me, what that means is it is possible to enter a real estate transaction, or to be hunting for your home, and for it to be an enjoyable experience, to not be full of stress. And when working with a buyer's agent, buyer's advocate like Chamberlain Property Advocates, what our clients say to us is that we made the process seamless for them. We removed the stress. Particularly when it comes to things like bidding at auction, people find that extraordinarily stressful. I love it. I love bidding at auctions. Auctions are my office, and I love bidding at auction. Auctioneers are quite funny. Their jokes are quite funny. No one seems to laugh. I laugh, but it's why we do what we do, because we are here to support people. Because I'm working in real estate every single day. I see so many shenanigans. And that agent that was just going to trade the property last week is another example of that. He would have sold it straight away to somebody. So it would have been sold by Thursday. I didn't bother going and checking because I got other properties to buy. But it's one of the reasons why people come to us, because they know that we have their best interests at heart. It's so very important that we buy the right property for our clients. And I also like to, what I call, future-proof the purchase. And I was talking to somebody today about this, is when you are buying real estate, you may be looking to buy something for and keep it for a couple of years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. It'll be individual to your circumstances. And it is important that you understand the strategy, or what you're looking to achieve through that purchase. And when I talk about future-proofing the purchase, I'm talking about similar to what I was saying just before about what your exit strategy is. Because when you're buying a property, you buy the best property you can with the most potential that you may not choose to realise, but your next purchaser may be able to realise. And that particularly can be if a property is perfectly fine to live in, it's livable, but it has the opportunity or scope for renovating it down the track. That is something that you can look to do. So actually, we worked with a client a couple of years ago. We worked for the first home buying client for 11 months. 11 months, because with our budget, I knew that we could buy a house on land. We could have bought 10 townhouses, but right at the start, I said to my client, because they wanted a house on land, they were living in a townhouse, and to get the suburb that they wanted, it would be so easy to buy a townhouse. But I said, I think we can buy you a house on land. Now, this was when here in Australia, interest rates were starting to creep up back in 2022, when the interest rates started to creep up. And so through the course of those 11 months, the market came off a bit, actually. People's borrowing capacity was getting reassessed when they were having their pre-approvals expire and going back to the banks. And that particular client, we had six properties fail building and pest inspection for various reasons. We had drainage issues. We had a chimney falling off the side of a house. We had termite issues in one of the properties, all kinds of challenges going on. Now, it's always the client's decision about whether or not they want to take on a renovation project, which that would have been any of those properties, because you have to factor that into your budget. Now, you may not want to do that. You may not have the time, skill, patience to do a renovation. And so they were saying no, they didn't want to take any of those projects on. So we just kept moving on to find the next property. We had 3 that we found off market that our clients really liked, and the vendors woke up the next morning and decided not to sell them, which is interesting in itself. What is also interesting is in May of 2022 was when the first lot of those interest rate rises started, and we had seen a property. It was about 2 weeks prior to the RBA meeting for that particular month, and our client, I remember it was a Tuesday, our client had, on the Monday, they had been out to have a look at the property. They loved the property, spoke to the agent, terrific, and he rings me the Tuesday morning. He goes, "You're not going to believe this. The vendors have decided not to sell the property." And I went, "Oh, okay." And I said, "Yeah, because they're not sure what's going on with interest rates." As it turns out, the market went down after that. So the vendor was probably kicking themselves that they didn't sell the property, because they wanted to sell the property to do their next thing. They wanted to downsize. The house was too big, and they were downsizing to buy something smaller, but they decided not to go ahead because they didn't know what's going on with the market. Probably should have sold it in hindsight, I would suggest to them. But anyway, so we had three properties that we found off market that the vendors decided they didn't want to sell, plus the 6 that failed building and pest. And in the end, we bought a house with land, house on land, which is what I had said all along to our client. So they stuck in there to make sure that we bought the right house. So we'd find houses, as I said, that failed building and pest, and we'd have a conversation about that, and they weren't prepared to take that on. And that's very much a personal decision for a client, for a buyer, because you may be happy to take a property on that needs a renovation. That's what's happening with this property. We've been trying to get this tenant out. That property needs a renovation, and they're buying it because that gets them into the suburb that they want. So they understand what their strategy is for getting into a suburb where their friends and family live. It's a house on land they wouldn't otherwise be able to afford in that area. And as I've indicated through the last few episodes, it has been a bit of an arduous situation and a bit of a tricky situation, but we've managed to get there, to get the tenants to leave, and our clients are about to settle on a property which he's a tradesman, so he's got the skill set there to fix up the property, and they are going to be, end of the day, they're going to own a house in a great location, because you can't move a location. You can fix up a house, but you're buying the location. So they were super happy with that scenario, and fingers crossed, as I said at the start of our episode today, hopefully we're going to be settling that property on Friday. So if you do need a hand, you need support with buying or selling a property, feel free to reach out and get in touch. chamberlainadvocates.com.au. I also have my Get Started in Property program, getstartedinproperty.com.au. So if you're not local to Melbourne or Victoria here in Australia, and you do want support and helping hand and understand the process of buying real estate, my Get Started in Property program is your step-by-step, follow the bouncing ball, complete the modules in your own time program that is for you, and you work at your own pace in those pockets of your time. We drop 2 modules a month, and by the end you will have gained the confidence and understand the process of buying real estate. I talk about here on Property Mama dealing with real estate agents, and you might think, I'm not confident, I wouldn't be able to do that. I have written scripts for you, so you know exactly what to say when you get on the phone and you're asking questions of a real estate agent to find out more about a property. I've got those scripts there for you. So if that's you and you want to find out more information about our step-by-step program that's self-paced, go to getstartedinproperty.com.au. So look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of Property Mama Adventures in Real Estate. The adventures continue. I've got more to share with you, and I will be covering in a future episode about underquoting and why underquoting exists and why it's never going to get stamped out. If you have any questions that you'd like me to cover on a future episode of Property Mama Adventures in Real Estate, just reach out on our socials or go to our website, chamberlainadvocates.com.au, and get in touch, and I'd be happy to answer any of your questions, if you pop in any comments here, I'll circle back and answer those for you in a future episode. So thanks for joining me again. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode of Property Mama Adventures in Real Estate, and look forward to catching you again and see you soon.